Bill Gates is in full panic mode, not because Windows 11 is failing, not because users are fleeing to Linux. This is about something far worse. A privacy catastrophe so massive that Microsoft executives are scrambling to contain it before the lawsuits pile up. Windows 11 has a feature called Timeline. It tracks everything you do. Every website you visit, every file you open, every application you use. And here's the nightmare. If you're on a work computer, school computer, or any managed device, your admin can see all of it. Every website, every search term, every private moment you thought was private. Your boss has been watching. Your IT department has a complete record. And nobody told you it was happening. Timeline launched quietly in Windows 10 back in 2018. Microsoft marketed it as a productivity feature. The idea was simple. Scroll back through your activity history and pick up where you left off. Sounds convenient, right? What Microsoft didn't advertise, what they buried in technical documentation, is that Timeline syncs everything to your Microsoft account. And when you're on a managed device, that data goes to your organization's admin portal. Every action gets logged, every website gets recorded, every search query gets stored. Your employer, your school, your IT department has access through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. No warrant needed, no notification required, just complete surveillance of everything you do. Sarah Mitchell works as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized insurance company in Denver. She's been there 4 years. Good performance reviews, no problems. She uses her work laptop for everything: email, presentations, client research, standard office work. In December 2024, she gets called into a meeting with HR and her manager. They sit her down and slide a printed document across the table. It's a log of every website she visited in the past 6 months, every single one. CNN articles she read during lunch, Amazon browsing during break, a job search website she visited twice when she was considering options, personal banking sites, medical information sites when she was researching a health concern. Everything. Timestamps, URLs, duration of visits, 6 months of complete browsing history. She didn't know they were tracking it. She never gave permission. She never saw a notification. Windows 11. Timeline was silently recording everything and sending it to her employer. The HR rep says they're concerned about productivity. The job search sites show she's not committed to the company. The personal browsing during work hours violates policy. She's being put on a performance improvement plan. She's stunned. She thought closing the browser meant the activity was private. She had no idea Windows itself was tracking and reporting everything to her employer. She's not alone. This is happening to millions of people right now, and most have no idea. Here's how Timeline actually works and why it's so invasive. Every time you open a file, launch an application, or visit a website, Windows creates an activity record. That record includes the timestamp, the application name, the file name or URL, and how long you spent on it. These records sync to Microsoft's cloud if you're signed in. But when your device is managed by an organization through Azure Active Directory or Microsoft Intune, that activity data becomes visible to your admin through the Microsoft 365 admin portal. There's a section called Productivity Score, showing user activity, application usage, content collaboration. And buried in there is access to timeline data, every managed user's activity history available to administrators. Microsoft's documentation says it's for improving productivity and identifying training needs. Reality: it's workplace surveillance on a scale that would make George Orwell nervous. David Park is an IT administrator at a law firm in Chicago. He manages 87 Windows devices for the firm's attorneys and staff. In early 2024, he discovers the productivity score feature in the admin portal. He clicks through it, curious what it shows. He's shocked. He can see individual user activity. He can see which websites specific employees visited. He can see how much time they spent in each application. He can generate reports showing everything a single user did over the past 90 days. Complete surveillance. He goes to the managing partner and asks if they want him to use this. The partner's eyes light up. Absolutely. They want to know if associates are billing accurately. They want to know if anyone's job hunting. They want to monitor everything. David refuses. He tells them it's a massive invasion of privacy. He gets pressured. The firm could use another IT person who understands the business needs better. David quits. He won't be part of surveillance. He posts about it on Reddit. The post goes viral. Hundreds of IT admins respond. Some say they're under pressure to spy on employees. Some say they're already doing it. Some say they didn't even know the feature existed. Microsoft enabled mass workplace surveillance and didn't tell anyone. The students being tracked without consent. It's not just corporations. Schools are using Timeline to monitor students. Every student with a school-issued laptop running Windows 11 is being tracked. Every website they visit, every document they open, every search query they type, all of it visible to school administrators. Some schools are open about it. They tell students and parents the devices are monitored, but many don't. Students assume their laptops are private. They're not. Jessica Rodriguez is a high school junior in California. Her school issued her a Dell laptop with Windows 11 at the start of the year. She uses it for homework, research, online classes, standard student stuff. She also uses it at home for personal browsing. YouTube, social media, messaging friends, normal teenage behavior. In October, she gets called to the principal's office. The principal and a counselor are there. They're concerned. Her browsing history shows she's been visiting websites about anxiety and depression. They want to know if she's okay, if she's having thoughts of self-harm. Jessica is mortified. She was doing research for a psychology project. But even if she wasn't, even if she was struggling, the fact that her school was monitoring her personal browsing without telling her feels like a violation. She didn't know they could see everything. Her parents didn't know. There was no consent form, no opt-out option. The school just decided to surveil students and didn't tell anyone. Jessica's mom pulls her out of the school. She files a complaint with the district. She contacts a lawyer about a class action lawsuit for privacy violations. The school district says they were using Microsoft's built-in tools for student safety. They didn't think they needed permission. Microsoft's Timeline turned school IT departments into surveillance operations, and nobody questioned it because Microsoft made it so easy. When Bill Gates got pulled into emergency meetings. Bill Gates hasn't run Microsoft since 2006. He stepped down as CEO, moved to a chairman role, and eventually left the board entirely in 2020. He's focused on his foundation, on climate change, on global health. He doesn't deal with Windows anymore, except when a privacy disaster threatens to become a legal catastrophe. In November 2024, Microsoft's legal team starts seeing a pattern. Employment lawsuits mentioning Timeline data, students and parents filing complaints, privacy advocates in the EU raising concerns about GDPR compliance. This isn't a few isolated incidents. This is a wave. Microsoft's PR team realizes they have a problem. Timeline has been active for years, collecting data, syncing it to the cloud, making it available to admins, and nobody outside the tech world noticed. Now people are finding out. The backlash is building. Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, calls an emergency strategy meeting. Legal, PR, engineering, product management, everyone's there, and they bring in Bill Gates. When Gates is involved, it means the issue is existential. They need someone who understands Microsoft's history, who knows how to navigate a crisis, who has the credibility to calm investors if this explodes. Gates reviews the Timeline feature. He reviews the data collection. He reviews the admin access. And according to sources inside Microsoft, his response is blunt. Why did we build workplace surveillance into the OS? Who approved this? The room goes quiet. The product managers explain it was designed as a productivity feature. The sync was for user convenience. The admin access was for enterprise management. Gates isn't buying it. He knows what this looks like. He knows the optics. Microsoft is already facing antitrust scrutiny. They're already dealing with trust issues from recall. They're already losing users to Linux and Mac. And now it comes out they've been enabling mass surveillance of employees and students. This could be the scandal that finally breaks Windows. The European regulator that started investigating. In December 2024, the Irish Data Protection Commission, which regulates Microsoft's European operations, announces an investigation into Timeline. They're examining whether the feature complies with GDPR. Under GDPR, you need explicit consent to collect personal data. You need to inform users what data you're collecting, how you're using it, who has access to it. Microsoft's timeline doesn't do that. It's enabled by default. The sync happens automatically. The admin access is invisible to users. There's no clear disclosure, no meaningful consent. The DPC says it's a potential violation of Articles 5, 6, and 13 of GDPR. If they rule against Microsoft, the fine could be up to 4% of global revenue. For Microsoft, that's $8.7 billion. That's not a slap on the wrist. That's existential. And it's not just Europe. California's Privacy Protection Agency starts asking questions. Under the California Consumer Privacy Act, users have a right to know what data companies collect. They have a right to opt out. Microsoft's timeline doesn't provide clear opt-out for managed devices. If you're on a work computer, you can't disable it without admin permissions. CPPA could fine Microsoft up to $7,500 per violation. With millions of users in California, the math gets ugly fast. Microsoft's legal team is now fighting on multiple fronts. EU regulators, California regulators, employment lawsuits, student privacy complaints. The timeline disaster is turning into a legal nightmare that could cost billions. When tech-savvy users found out about timeline tracking, they looked for ways to disable it. Registry edits, group policy changes, PowerShell scripts. For a while, it worked. Then Microsoft started patching the workarounds. Updates would re-enable timeline. Settings would get overridden. Users try to take back control. Microsoft patches it out. Thomas Becker is a software engineer in Berlin who's used Windows since Windows 95. When he learned about Timeline, he disabled it. Then Windows 11 updated. Timeline came back. He disabled it again. Next update, back again. Thomas finally gives up. He wipes Windows and installs Arch Linux. Microsoft lost a developer who used their OS for 28 years because they wouldn't let him disable spyware. The corporation's quietly switching to Mac and Linux. What Microsoft didn't anticipate is the corporate backlash. Some companies love the surveillance. They want to monitor employees, but others realize it's a massive liability. If your company is tracking employee browsing history, you're now responsible for that data. If there's a breach, if that data leaks, you're liable. Employment lawsuits become easier. Wrongful termination claims can subpoena timeline data. If an employee was fired and timeline shows they weren't actually violating policy, the company loses. Discrimination cases get stronger. If timeline data shows similar behavior between employees, but only certain ones got punished, that's evidence of bias. Smart companies realize Timeline is a legal time bomb. Daniels & Associates is a financial consulting firm in Boston. They have 340 employees, all on Windows devices. In late 2024, their general counsel reviews Timeline and the data it collects. She brings it to the executive team. Her recommendation: migrate away from Windows. The surveillance liability is too high. If they keep using Timeline, they need to disclose it to employees. If they disclose it, morale tanks. If they don't disclose it and it comes out in litigation, they're facing penalties and lawsuits. The solution: switch operating systems. The firm chooses Mac. They order 340 MacBook Pros. Cost: $1.2 million. They spend another $300,000 on migration, training, and software licensing. Total cost: $1.5 million. Microsoft lost a massive enterprise contract because they built surveillance into the OS. And Daniels & Associates isn't alone. Industry reports show enterprise Mac sales up 63% in Q4 2024. Linux enterprise deployments up 41%. Companies are fleeing Windows, and Timeline is a major reason why. Here's the thing people don't understand about Bill Gates and Microsoft. He's not in charge. He left the board in 2020. He can advise. He can warn. He can't force them to remove Timeline. And even if he could, it's too late. The data's already been collected, the lawsuits are filed, the regulatory investigations are underway. Removing Timeline now looks like an admission of guilt. In January 2025, Microsoft announces changes. They're renaming it Activity History. adding a notification on managed devices, giving admins a toggle to disable it. It's damage control. Too little, too late. Users aren't buying it. The lawsuits keep coming. The internal Microsoft culture that enabled this. How did Timeline get built and shipped without anyone realizing its workplace surveillance? For years, Microsoft has operated under data collection first, privacy second. Telemetry in Windows collects thousands of data points. Microsoft 365 tracks user activity. Xbox monitors gameplay. Azure logs everything. Engineers are incentivized to collect more data, build features that increase engagement, create lock-in. Privacy concerns are handled after features are designed. Timeline went through this exact process. Product managers wanted cross-device activity sync. Engineers built it. Lawyers said it's compliant if users agree to terms of service. Nobody asked if users actually want their activity history synced. Nobody considered implications for managed devices. The feature shipped, and now it's a disaster. Former Microsoft employees describe a culture where user privacy is a compliance checkbox, not a core value, or features get built to drive cloud adoption and subscription revenue. Users are products, not customers. Windows isn't software you own. It's a service that extracts value from your data. The students suing schools and Microsoft. In early 2025, a class action lawsuit gets filed. 34 high school students from 6 states suing their school districts and Microsoft for violations of FERPA, COPPA, and state privacy laws. The students argue schools use Timeline for warrantless surveillance. Microsoft provided the tools. Neither obtained proper consent. Microsoft tries to get the case dismissed. The judge doesn't buy it. The case moves forward. Discovery begins. Internal emails get subpoenaed. What comes out is damning. Product managers discussed how Timeline data would be valuable for enterprise admins. Marketing materials pitched the admin dashboard as employee monitoring. Legal memos warned about privacy risks, but recommended proceeding anyway. The Smoking Gun, a 2017 internal presentation titled Monetizing User Activity Data. It outlines how Timeline could drive enterprise sales through monitoring and analytics. It never mentions user consent or privacy protections. Microsoft's defense collapses. They settle for north of $85 million. But the damage to Microsoft's reputation is permanent. Timeline is one feature, but it's a symptom of something much larger. Microsoft has spent the past decade transforming Windows from a product into a service. Windows 10 introduced Windows as a service, forced updates, telemetry, cloud integration. Windows 11 accelerated it, mandatory Microsoft accounts, OneDrive integration, Copilot AI watching everything. Every change moves control away from users. You don't decide when to update. Microsoft does. You don't decide what data gets collected. Microsoft does. You're not the customer anymore. You're the product. Your data, your activity, your behavior, that's what Microsoft sells. And Bill Gates is watching the company destroy the trust that made his vision possible. He can't stop it. He's not in charge. The admin who blew the whistle. In February 2025, a Microsoft employee leaks internal documents. The leaker is an Azure Active Directory admin who's been with Microsoft 11 years. The documents show Microsoft knew Timeline would be controversial. Product managers debated whether to make admin access opt-in, but decided against it to boost enterprise adoption. Marketing teams were told to avoid emphasizing monitoring capabilities. Pitch it as productivity and sync, not surveillance. Legal was concerned about GDPR but decided to proceed. The documents prove Microsoft knew Timeline was invasive. They chose profit over privacy. Microsoft fires the leaker and sends a legal threat. The leaker hires a whistleblower attorney. They're protected under federal law. Microsoft backs off. The story dominates tech news. Microsoft's stock drops 6% in 3 days. Enterprise customers start asking questions. Consumer trust hits an all-time low. Bill Gates finally speaks. He's disappointed. Privacy should have been the priority, but he doesn't apologize. He doesn't take responsibility. The mass migration to Linux accelerates. Throughout 2024, Linux desktop market share grew to 5.2%, a 62% increase. Then timeline scandal breaks. January 2025, 6.1%. February, 7.3%. March, 8.8%. Exponential growth. People who never considered Linux are trying it. Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Fedora seeing record downloads. Pop! OS exploding. Forums full of new users. The Linux community is welcoming them, and the experience is better than ever. Modern Linux distros are polished, user-friendly, compatible with most hardware. Gaming improved dramatically with Proton. Adobe alternatives like GIMP, Inkscape, DaVinci Resolve are powerful. LibreOffice handles documents. Carlos Medina is a graphic designer in Mexico City who used Windows 22 years. He heard about Timeline. He's done. He downloads Linux Mint, installs it. The installation takes 20 minutes. Everything works. Graphics tablet, printer, external drives. He installs GIMP and Inkscape. Within 2 weeks, he's productive. He doesn't miss Windows. Microsoft lost him forever, and there are millions like him. Why Microsoft's cloud revenue won't save them? Microsoft's executives keep pointing to cloud revenue. Azure growing, Microsoft 365 growing, cloud booming. So Windows declining doesn't matter, right? Wrong. Windows is the gateway into the Microsoft ecosystem. You use Windows, you get pushed toward Microsoft 365, OneDrive, Teams, Edge. Everything funnels users toward subscriptions. If users leave Windows, that funnel breaks. They switch to Mac, they end up in Apple's ecosystem. Linux, they use open source alternatives. They don't subscribe to Microsoft 365. They use Google Workspace or LibreOffice. Losing Windows users means losing future subscription revenue. Enterprise customers are starting to diversify, adding Mac devices, piloting Linux, exploring Google Workspace. Timeline accelerated the questioning. If Microsoft built surveillance into Windows, what are they doing in Azure? What data are they collecting from Microsoft 365? Enterprise customers are doing privacy audits. Moving workloads to competitors. Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, self-hosted solutions. Microsoft's cloud growth is slowing. Wall Street is noticing. The timeline scandal isn't just about Windows. It's about trust. The future where Windows is just another OS. For 30 years, Windows was the OS. It had over 90% market share. It was the default. Businesses used Windows, schools used Windows, consumers used Windows. Alternatives existed, but they were niche. That era is ending. By the end of 2025, analysts predict Windows will drop below 70% market share. Mac will hit 18%. Linux will hit 10%. Chrome OS will take another 5%. Windows will still be the largest, but not the dominant monopoly it was. By 2028, some analysts predict Windows could fall below 60%. At that point, it's just another OS. Developers will stop prioritizing Windows. Software companies will focus on cross-platform tools. Web apps will replace desktop apps. The ecosystem that kept people locked into Windows will erode. And Microsoft knows this. That's why they're panicking. That's why Bill Gates got pulled into meetings. That's why they're scrambling with damage control. They can see the numbers. They can see the trend lines. Windows is dying, and Timeline might be the scandal that killed it. Not because Timeline itself is the worst thing Microsoft ever did, but because it revealed what Microsoft has become. A company that prioritizes data extraction over user trust. A company that builds surveillance into products and calls it productivity. A company that would rather spy on users than serve them. And users are done. They're not going to take it anymore. They're switching to alternatives. They're telling their friends. They're posting on social media. The rebellion is spreading, and Microsoft can't stop it because they created it. What you can do right now to protect yourself. If you're on Windows 11 or Windows 10 with Timeline enabled, here's what you need to know. First, check if Timeline is active. Go to Settings, Privacy, Activity History. If it's on, your activity is being tracked. If you're on a managed device, your admin can see it. You can try to disable it. Turn off Let Windows Collect My Activities. Turn off Sync across devices. But if your device is managed, those settings might be locked or overridden. The only way to be sure is to switch operating systems. Linux is free. Ubuntu and Linux Mint are beginner-friendly. Most hardware works out of the box. Gaming is viable with Proton. You keep your privacy. If you're not ready for Linux, consider Mac. It's expensive, but Apple's business model doesn't rely on data extraction. They make money selling hardware, not selling your data. Mac respects privacy more than Windows. Another option, if you must stay on Windows, use a virtual machine for sensitive activity. Run Linux in a VM for banking, personal browsing, anything private. Keep Windows for applications that require it, but isolate your private data. Use a VPN. Use encrypted messaging. Use password managers. Minimize what Microsoft can see, but the best solution is leave Windows entirely. The timeline scandal proved Microsoft can't be trusted with your data. They'll collect it, they'll share it with admins, they'll monetize it, and they won't tell you it's happening. You deserve better. Your data deserves better, and there are alternatives that respect you. Use them. If this investigation into Microsoft's surveillance opened your eyes, share this with everyone you know, because Microsoft is hoping this story dies quietly. They're hoping people forget. They're hoping the lawsuits settle and the news cycle moves on. Don't let them. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell your coworkers. Tell your family. Windows 11 is spyware. Timeline proves it. And the only way to stop Microsoft from doing this again is to hit them where it hurts. Stop using their products. Move to alternatives. Make them understand surveillance isn't acceptable. Bill Gates built Microsoft on the promise of empowering people with technology. Today's Microsoft is doing the opposite. They're using technology to control people, to monitor people, to extract value from people. It's a betrayal of everything Gates claimed to stand for, and whether he admits it or not, he bears some responsibility. He built the culture. He set the priorities. He created the company that became this. Now he's watching it collapse under the weight of its own greed. Windows might survive. It might adapt. It might regain some trust, but it will never again be the unquestioned dominant force it once was. That era ended the moment users realized Microsoft was spying on them. And if you're still using Windows after everything you just learned, ask yourself why. What's keeping you there? Convenience? Familiarity? Fear of change? Is that worth giving up your privacy? Is that worth letting your boss or your school watch everything you do? The choice is yours. But now you know what's happening. You can't claim ignorance. You know Microsoft built surveillance into the OS. You know your activity is being tracked. You know admins can see everything. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. Choose wisely.